2:30, in like 2 minutes, the new session commences. So I invite my dear colleague, Dr. Reem Hafiz, to preside the following session, which has two eminent professors, Professor Samuel Novagovsky from France. We also have Professor Lilia Shnaiti from Tunisia, and finally Professor Rima Malik from Lebanon. So Reem, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rada. Simplement, je voudrais savoir, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Do you hear me?
Oui. On t'entend et on te voit.
Bien, ça va. Very good morning to all of our dear guests, and thank you for joining us at the second edition of our international conference that took place this year entirely online. It's also my pleasure to welcome with you our eminent guests who come from different countries to share their knowledge and enhance our mental horizons. From Tunisia, from Lebanon, and from France, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Professor Novakovsky from Université de Lorraine. And I would like to introduce Professor Novakovsky to you. Professor Samuel Novakovsky is a lecturer at the University of Lorraine. He is a researcher at LORIA, Laboratory of Computer Science and its Application, and more especially in the KIWI team, Knowledge, Information, and Web Intelligence. His current research is mainly focused on the modeling of web users, artificial intelligence, intelligence companion systems, and their implementation in transversal e-education projects. He also works on the modeling of the notion of wandering in digital environments and on the modeling of adaptive interactive systems. He teaches digital humanities at the Information Communication Department of UFRSHS Nancy and at the École des Mines de Nancy, and carries out several education innovation projects. He is also member of the network of pedagogical guides of the University of Lorraine and intervened on question of humanism, digital transition and pedagogy in many public and private institutions in France and abroad. I would like to welcome you, Professor Novakovsky, and the floor is yours. Professor Novakovsky will talk about the pandemic as an opportunity to be bold in teaching at university. En français, la pandémie est l'occasion de faire preuve d'audace pédagogique à l'université. Monsieur le professeur, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Hello to all my friends and colleagues from Le Caire and everywhere. I have seen that many of you are well-known friends with which I have lead many projects. So hello to all of you. I will talk a short talk this afternoon. I'm sorry, but I have to leave for personal reason. I have to leave just before 3 o'clock, and I will try to focus on what I want to say today. First, I will share my. You will see. Okay, I will want to share some information, some ideas, and today I would like to take the opportunity of. On ne voit pas ma présentation. It's okay?
Non, on la voit maintenant, monsieur. On la voit.
On la voit? Okay.
Oui, on la voit.
Okay, okay. Look, I just would like to say to share with you some reflections, some ideas, because this condition we are living now with the pandemic needs to us to have the possibility, give us the possibility to have a reflexivity on our practical or pedagogical practical. Why could we use this time to think about what is the sense of our work as teacher, as researcher, then what is the sense and what should be in the university to take into account many challenges that the pandemic give us the possibility to see. And I think that the pandemic could be an opportunity to be to try to rethink many things and to take into account our audience. And we have to focus on the difficulty and what is the sense of introducing our students as citizen in our society. So this afternoon, I would like to share with you many ideas, and maybe today I cannot stay with you to discuss about these ideas, but we are all connected by the many social networks and email and so on. We can share later on what I will share with you this afternoon. Then the idea today is not to consider that it is not a situation with many difficulties. We need to take into account that the fact that there is contamination, we have to protect our students, we have to protect ourselves, and we have to be vigilant in our organization of our courses. But this situation has not to be a way not to innovate. This situation is not to be an opportunity not to do anything and not to think about what it could be done and what it could be experiment in our courses. So we have to be prudent for a sanitary aspect. But we do not have to be prudent. We don't have to be in French say frileux. We don't have to be we do not have to be in a situation that we only consider that we cannot solve the problem we have to experiment, and we have to propose many new ideas, and we have to use this situation to be better and to do better, best things in our job. If we consider that these two problems, sanitary and pedagogic, are treated as something we cannot dépasser, I think we are in the possibility that our university could be we cannot follow what it has been done in the past. So we need to think about the necessity to imagine something new, taking into account the constraint of this time. So the idea is not to be not to think about the security of everybody, but we need to be in a pedagogical way. We need to use this time to try to reinvent the university. Because we need to reinvent the university, because this time with pandemic, with the difficulty, with people who are staying at home to study, to teach, and so on, could be the moment to think what could be the university for the next year in the beginning of this of the 2000 years. It could be the moment to think about of the attractivity. What could be the university today to solve the problem of our time? If you consider that university is now inside the box, only in a distance way, and we consider that university cannot solve or have to stay outside the main problem of our times, I think we are in the wrong way. We have to take the opportunity of this time to try to build the university as a necessary component of the society we want to challenge this beginning of this cycle. We need this century. We need to think the university as a essential component of what are to solve the big challenges of this world. These challenges, we know what they are. It's concern what kind of society we want. Do we need to consider that the society we have as the right one? I don't think so. I consider that the society maybe do have to propose to the youth that a place, a way to find a job, a way to give sense to their life, a way to give us a place to have a life inside the society and not outside the society. So university for me is one of the main components of this idea. It's one of the main components to think about what the sense of the society we want. So I consider that this time are the time to think about that. We need to invent. We need to invent because the university do not have to be think as only the place where students who have obtained baccalaureate, a place where they have to go. Then it's not only a place. We consider that they leave high school, they are baccalaureate, and as evident as some of our director and so on, and ministry and so on said, the university is not the place where students have to go after the baccalaureate. We do not have to think that in that way. The university have to be think as the place where students will find some conditions, some pedagogical approach, some places, some learning activities that they give us the possibility to build their own personal project or professional project. And the university have to be reinvented as the place to accompany students in their own way, to build their own situation, to build their own place in the society, and the society as a place which welcomes them in the life. So we have to invent the university, because I consider that this university do not do that. Because university is focused on many challenges, many difficulties, constraints, many economical and financial difficulties. They have to have answer to the massification. They have to answer to the problem of what are the content we have to teach, and all the difficulties we have today to be an alternative to the main communications channel as a social network, television, news television, and so on. We need to reinvent the university to be the answer and the place where we can imagine the emancipation of our youth. So first, it could be, I think it's the time to think about that. We have to reinvent the university also, not to have only as objective the international classement, international score. The university is not to have a good place inside the international score. Imagine and reinvent the university is to understand that to be the best to accompany students, to be a principal component of the society for the future, it needs to be the place where we have to imagine something where the pedagogy is as a center. We need to think about the future is based on what we are trying to do in the pedagogical relationship between students, between knowledge, and between teachers. We need to put that in the center of our intention. Yes, the performance is today evaluated in terms of research, but we have to think that if we have to have a research of an excellent or performing research, is based on how we can teach to our students, what kind of student we have and what kind of citizens there will be, and the research is based on that. And we need to understand that that the university is not a school place which we each year we say it's the place inside the Shanghai comparison. For me, we have to say the university is the best when she gives the possibility to students to be after and inside the lesson course and so on, by the interaction with teachers, by the interaction with others, by the interaction with the city, with places, with everybody, obtain a place, a recognized place of its citizenship inside the society. So for me, we need to think about that too, because today we can see that with the pandemic, we can see that lots of people are excluded from the system. Lots of people are put away of the main situation, and we have the evidence that the society is do not give a place to everybody to be a citizen as he has to be. So university have to have this role of giving the possibility of help students to be citizen by pedagogy, by knowledge, and by the way we consider them as citizens. So we have to reinvent outside this kind of scoring, this kind of evaluation based on a phantasm, based on an illusion of the performing of the research. So we need to be inventive. We need to try. We need to try and maybe fail, but we need to have audace. I don't remember the word in English, but we need to have audace, pedagogical audace. It's a mixing language formulation. Because, and this way of thinking the university, it's first a way of taking and introducing pedagogy as a positive way, by putting in the center of our courses the necessary reflexivity and the necessary helping to think about what is occur when we are in this kind of learning objective. We need to think about the way we teach, the way we learn. We need to think of all that, because if we cannot take that as a first way to understand what could have to be the university, my point of view is that we can miss the target of the future. Then, yes, we can talk about digital. We can talk about digital tools, but digital tools for me have to be at their own place. Digital have to serve the human. The digital have to be a tool for the human and the human emancipation. We do not have to put only the digital answer of our problem. We need to think about the problem we have, and then the digital could be an answer, but not the answer. So digital is here. We cannot. It's an evidence. It's a way now in our world. Digital is there. It's not to be back, not to erase that, but we have to rethink the place of digital tools in our life. First, we need to think about what are our pedagogical objectives. What is the society we want? What is this society if we want to think her as the place to give a place to everybody? So our digital can serve this objective. So, for example, we need to take time to think about that. For example, in this time of pandemic, we need to think how we can teach now, introducing this distance between teacher and the learning community. But how can we think about the university in this time of the 21st century? Can we continue to build university as we built it in the 19th century with big amphitheater where the people are only focused on the knowledge the teacher have? Today, knowledge is everywhere. Knowledge today, the competency is how we can connect to the other, how we can exchange with the other, how we can discuss with the other, how we can share content with the other, how can we build collaboratively content and resources that we could be shared. So if we cannot take about all these challenges, we will do always the same university, and I guess that we cannot be able to propose an appropriate answer to the challenges of this time. So we need to I cannot translate my title, but osons l'audace pédagogique. It's how can we do in an alternative way? We need to think about to renew and to reinvent the way the relationship between teacher and student. Not to have place where there is one thinking, one we have the knowledge in his mind, and the other who do not have anything in their mind. Everybody in this earth has experiment. Everybody in this world, even if it is someone who have 20 years old or 25 years old, everybody has an experience of the world. So the university would have to be the place where the condition to share their own experience is available. So we need to have this title, Osons l'usage pédagogique. We need to think about new spaces to learn. Today we are behind our screen because we are only Teams teacher or Teams student. But it will be a time where we go back inside our university. Why can we do not think about the university as nice places, welcoming places, coloring places? And we know that beauty is make us happy. If I am in a place where everything is dark, everything is bad, not nice, how can I teach, or how can I learn in this kind of place? So could we think about nice place to learn, nice university, coloring university, vegetalized university, ecological university, inclusive university? And the third place to oser l'audace pédagogique is to build our tools, our platform, our software, to introduce some many connectivities and mixities, interaction. And we need to use and to build these tools as tools to enhance this possibility to make connection. So this connection will be in the practical. This connection will be, and all the software are communicating. This connection will be in the role we have as teacher or as student. Maybe in this kind of audace pédagogique, I'll be, as teacher, the student of my student. I can learn from my student. I can share many things, and I will be bigger after discussing with my student. I will be greater if I can discuss with them, and I could be. Sorry, it's I'm managing. It's a mixing in my head. So I could be a better teacher if I can discuss and exchange knowledge with my students. So, osons les axes pédagogiques, it's a way to say there is no frontier. The frontier is only a mark which have to be crossed and today at the university there are many frontiers, and many of those are not be designed to be crossed. So we have to, osons l'audace pédagogique, c'est que it is a way to understand that education is not beginning at the first year university and finishing at this 5 year when you have your master. It's a way to accompany everybody long life. It's a long life learning. It's a learning society, learning construction, building of the way we interact all along our life. So, osons l'audace pédagogique, it's a way to give to citizens a way to understand also. We have seen today many of awful acting especially in France, and we need to educate, to teach, to learn from everybody, to give to the maximum people and especially to our students the way to understand the dimension, the specificity of our digital tools, to have people which are critical in all the way of the science and the way we interact together. And we need to think that for citizenship, for freedom, and for critical thinking. It's, for me, these three dimensions are, for me, the challenges of the university. And try to use this time to understand what they can be translated in our university, in our courses, in our building, in our way we interact all together to focus on citizenship, freedom, and critical thinking. And then, why? Because I can afford that our work is contribute not to think an inclusive society, in learning society. My work as teacher in the university is a political project. This political project is to build a society which gives a place to everybody, not to accept that most of our students do not have a job, do not have a decent way of life, do not have a decent way of being in the society. So my work as teacher in the university is to think about that. So we need to use this time to think about that. So to conclude, we need to think inside, not outside. We need to think inside to eliminate each kind of dark thinking, obscurantism in French. We need to think about the need and waiting needs from our students. We need to think inside the university as a component of the society. The university is not a closed world. It's a world inside something bigger than the university, and we cannot continue to think the university as a closed world. This is the society. So if we want to change, to think about the society of the future, we need to change and to think about the university of the future. So, osons l'audace pédagogique. It's a way to give the possibility to each of us to be a creator, a poet, a man as the old philosopher has also talked about. It's a man which is able to understand, to describe, to critique, to think, and to share with all the human beings what is his own experience. So I will finish on this last sentence, but for to conclude my talk, and sorry for my very, very bad English, and I think if we cannot take the time now to try to think on this place of the university, of the society, and how the university have to change to have an impact of the change of the society we want, a society which gives freedom, critical thinking, and beauty to our students as citizens, we missed our target, we missed our objective. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Nowackowski from Université de Lorraine. Let me borrow some of your words, because it's also our dream. You said that, and I will try to translate it in English. I dream of a university that works from and not alongside, from society, these issues, these needs and expectations of students, and not alongside the challenges of the beginning of the 21st century. So it's our dream also. And thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. And I would ask the attendees, because Professor Nowackowski will leave just in a few minutes, if you have any questions to Professor Samuel Nowackowski. And then I will introduce our second guest, but because Professor will leave. Is there any questions? You write it in the chat, of course. I see that there is no question, but they all...
I'm sorry, but I have to leave. Don't hesitate to write.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur le professeur. Et en tous les cas, tout le monde vous remercie pour cette excellente présentation, pour cette analyse. Donc, je vous remercie énormément. Thank you very much.
Merci à vous.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Merci. I will invite you to welcome with me our second guest, Professor Lilia Schmidt, and our very dear friend from Université de Tunis, from Tunisia, University of Tunisia. And let me introduce Professor Cheneti to you. Professor Lilia Cheneti is an associate professor of computer science at the Higher Institute of Computer Science and Communication Technologies, University of Toulouse, and a graduate of the University of Braunschweig. I don't know if I spell it right, because it's in Germany, where she read for an engineer and master degree in computer science. She is a member of PRES Research Lab at the University of Toulouse, and was associated researcher at the Computer Science Department at Telecom Bretagne Brest in France. Her PhD was realized in collaboration with the Semantic Web Group at the Institute of Information System of the University of Hanover in Germany. And she has also a diploma of habilitation à diriger des recherches in computer science. Her research interests include technology-enhanced learning, semantic web, and e-assessment and learning. Professor Cheneti is involved also in several e-learning projects and has co-authored various online courses and the massive open online course on object-oriented modeling of computer applications. Welcome our very dear Professor Cheneti, and the floor is yours with a talk that has title of Towards Open and Hybrid Scenarios for E-Learning During Educational Disruption. La parole est à vous.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Lynn. Vous voyez mon écran?
Oui, tout à fait, on le voit, Lynn.
Très bien. Donc, I will try to present in English, but I will be happy to answer your questions also in French, which maybe it will be easier for me to answer the questions. So I'm very happy to be with you today, and I really thank thank you for the invitation. Thank you, my dear friend Rada, for the invitation, and congratulations for this very nice conference. So my talk will be about hybrid scenarios for e-learning during educational disruption, and my talk will be organized in 3 main points. The first one will be a set of observations that we've done during the last months and the problem that we have faced. The second part, which will be very short, to give you an idea the way that we have assisted and supported our colleagues in our university to overcome the problems that they have faced to do their online learning. And the third part will be about the way that we can imagine a hybrid learning or a blended learning, and what kind of challenges that we have to face, and what kind of actions should we implement. Let's begin with the first part. So since this morning we were talking about the problem that we have faced due to this pandemic, and based on that, there is a lot of interruptions in the schools and in the universities, and I think there are a set of observations. I'd like to draw your attention to this figure, which is the triangle of the pedagogical triangle, where we have the trainer or the teacher, we have the content, and we have the learner. And the trainer will share with his content as a kind of learning content, des cours. And the learner will do some practical activities, and the learner will discuss with the teacher some questions and some remarks. When we move to distance learning, so we will still have these three main actors or 3 main aspects, but we will use this kind of online support. We will use online tools to communicate, and we will use also online environment to deposit the work done by the learners. So let's see what kind of problems we have faced. So if we take the three main actors or the 3 main aspects, the first one is related to the teacher. We have observed that many of our colleagues, unfortunately, they do not have sufficient ICT skills. They do not master the use of these tools, and some of them are not very motivated to go through online learning. They find that there are a lot of tools. Even when they have done their online courses, they have a tendency to reproduce the face-to-face scenarios, and it's mainly based on transmissive model. And I think that needs for regarding these problems are basically training of trainers, training the teachers to instructional design their scenarios for online learning, and to give them the opportunity to discover many online tools and functionalities. Second aspect is related to the learners and the students. Basically the same problems, but I can add that for the students it was a little bit more difficult because they do not use it to have a kind of autonomy in learning, and they find that it is very complicated for them to move to this new way of learning. And during the last month, many teachers give them a lot of work, so they were really they do not know with which work they have to start. And I think we need to orient them, to support them so that they have a kind of learning methodology, and we need also to support them in the asynchronous learning, which means that they do not need to be connected in the same time that their teacher in order to follow the course. Third point is regarding the content. We have discovered during the last months that many lectures are not in digital format. They do not use at all the multimedia element, and they are, even when this content is prepared, it is hosted in many different environments. So there is a huge need now to digitalize this content, to work on the instructional design of this interactive learning content, to think and to work on the preparation of very well videos, pedagogical videos, animation, and to host them on university server so that we can access to this content. So during the last month, our priorities were online hosting of pedagogical resources, finding any way to communicate with our learners, either synchronous or asynchronous tools, and collect their work and give them feedback and try to assess or to give them a continuous assessment of their work. Now I move to the second part of my presentation, which is the way that we have supported the teacher in my university. As my colleague Rim has said by presenting me, so I'm coordinating actually the pedagogical innovation unit in my university, and I'm the head of online learning department. And in this department, together with many colleagues, we have actually set up and worked on 3 intensive online training sessions. Each session has a duration of 1 week. This was supported by the Virtual University of Tunis in Tunisia. And we have created a kind of network of e-learning referent in the institutions. And we have oriented teachers to the use of online tools, to the use of an LMS, of a learning management system. We have helped them to register their learners and to register the teachers on the platform. And we have created, thanks to the Learning Lab project, we have created actually a community around online learning and instructional design and pedagogical innovation. So to give you an idea about the numbers, so on the platform, we have around 13,000 accounts of students who were active on the platform by the end of the last semester, and the number of teachers was around 1,287 teachers. We used the platform Moodle. So we have done some assessments, some evaluation of this phase, and I took only some histograms. And as you see, what is interesting in the first one, that the main persons who registered in these online sessions were young teachers. Which give me a lot of hope for the future. So this will be the teacher of our university in the next 10 or 15 years. And these persons are really motivated to use the online tools for their lectures. Second thing, you see what they have learned from these sessions, adding of online resources, adding of tools, access to platform, and so on. And they have appreciated that a lot. And the last histogram that I show you is that by the end of this training sessions, they were motivated to use online learning with their students and to also register in other training sessions. Now let's see how the hybrid learning will be implemented and how we can implement it in our universities. First thing, I'd like to draw your attention to this, the first point, which is that what we have implemented during the last months was a kind of emergency online training, or emergency online learning. So it was for us, it was a kind of une course, running une course contre le temps, in order to finish the semester. And we are happy that we could finish the university year. And now we are implementing in many institutions, many faculties, a kind of hybrid learning. The definition that we can take of hybrid learning environment is the definition given by Professor Daniel Peraya, and where we will articulate a face-to-face training session with distance training sessions, but using a kind of an environment where we will have mediated elements using multimedia such as video or images or so on. So we have not to forget that when we move to online learning, we need three main aspects. We need flexibility, which means that learner can access to the content anytime and any place. We need collaborative work because in that way we will avoid this dropout of learners from the learning environment. And we need tutoring because we have to we have to orient the learner to the best way of learning, to the best resources, and so on. So we need these three main aspects. Now, there are many types of scenarios for hybrid learning, but there is a very interesting reference given by the University of Lyon, and which actually presents 6 scenarios for hybrid learning. So I try to translate them in English. So the first one is actually there are 6 scenarios, but 3 are based on teaching and 3 are based on learning. The first one is called la scène, or the scène, which means that in this scenario, if we adopt it in our courses, we will have more textual resources. We will have mainly textual resources, which means that the main functionality that we will use in the LMS will be the deposit of documents. The second one is also focused on teaching, and if we compare it with the previous one, we will use multimedia resources such as videos or images and so on. The third one, le gîte, is a kind of scenario where the teacher will use external resources, which means, for example, in entrepreneurship programs, we may, for example, invite a person from the outside the academic world and ask this entrepreneur to share his or her experience with the students. Now I moved to the second part of the scenarios, which is based on learning. And the first one is called the équipage, where we will actually more involve the students in the learning process in this hybrid scenario and ask them, for example, to prepare their journals or to collaborate on a forum or to use communication tools. So in this scenario, the communication plays a very important role. The fifth scenario is the following. It's called the subway or le métro, where we have more active learning. We have more openness. We have more collaborative learning. We have a kind of reflection from the side of students of their learning methods. And the last one is the most general scenario, or the scenario which combines everything. It's called ecosystem, and where we will have active participation, we will have diversified, different technological tools used, we will have many multimedia documents, interaction between peers, and tutoring. Let's move now to the challenges. So if we adopt hybrid learning, maybe we will be in one of these scenarios. Now, what kind of challenges we have to face? And I think there are basically 3 main challenges. The first one is regarding the content, the instructional design of the content and of the learning process. First, we have to think about different content to be delivered online. We cannot go to the online learning or to the distance learning with the same content and the same way it is structured. Second one, it's a really very interesting framework for pedagogical innovation, because once we move to distance learning, there are many tools, many techniques to introduce this pedagogical innovation, to use active learning, to use project-based learning, to use brainstorming, and so on. So technology could be really used for pedagogical innovation. And the third one, and it was also cited by Dr. Hamia, is the quality. Quality is very important, because when we move to distance learning, we will be more visible on the web. So we have to respect some criteria for quality. We should check the information that we will share with our students, because it can be visible for anybody on the web. We have to check also the readability and the choice of the colors. We have to check criteria related to pedagogy, the way the course is structured. Is it adapted or not to the target group? Is it conform to with the learning outcomes, and so on. And we have also to check the technical criteria. If we choose a tool, is this tool available for our students? Do they need a lot of time in order to display this video or to display this resource? Second challenge is to be prepared to role changes. So, which means that students are prepared to change their role. They have to be more active. They have to be more open to listening to others, and this may be also prepare them to their future to their future work. And they will be more collaborate with their colleagues. They will have some kind of transversal skills. They will know how to search the information, how to learn from multimedia elements, how to express, how to communicate through these tools. And teacher, and I think the difficulty is with teacher. They have also to change their role. We are not teacher, we are facilitator. We have to orient more our students to the best resources to learn, to actually answer their questions, to stimulate their reflections, to prepare them to be a good citizen, as said by Samuel, and also to listen to their inquiries, to listen to their remarks, and to encourage them, to motivate them. And the last challenge is how to deploy this environment, this hybrid learning environment, how to implement them. I think it has been also said at the beginning this morning, we have to facilitate the access to internet, to PCs. PCs should be accessible for our students in our countries in a very reasonable price. We have to design our scenarios more on asynchronous learning, because this type of learning provides more flexibility. We have also to saisir cette opportunity, to take these opportunities to promote more creative common culture. Everything is on the web, but we have to think about these licenses of using these resources. We have also to change the way that we are teaching, that should be centered on the learner and should provide this flexible learning environment. And I think learning should be with technology and not learning for technology. So I think it was said by one of the colleagues this morning, actually, if we implement this hybrid or flipped learning or blended learning, what kind of impact on our assessment? And I remember that I have done my first experience on blended learning. It was actually 15 years ago, and I have published that in one conference, local conference. Actually, it was organized in Tunisia, but together with a Japanese university, and then it was subject of a book chapter, where I took with my colleagues a course. This was my first online course, object-oriented programming. I have written this course together with colleagues, and I have took the students in my lecture in the year 2003 and 2004, so both semester. And I have, you see the grades of the students in this year where they studied in a traditional base. And the year after, so we have introduced this blended learning scenario. And we have discovered that grades were better than the year before. So based on that, we have developed more this experiment, and in the book chapter we've spoken about this experiment actually deployed on other courses. To conclude, so I think that work on reducing the digital divide to give access to technologies for students and teachers. There is a lot of work on training of trainers in technology enhanced learning. This is requested by many of our colleagues right now, and I think it's an opportunity so that our colleagues will move more easily to this digital learning environments. We have to encourage teachers for digital productions. Open education, open pedagogy, and open access are very, very important right now, because by sharing our pedagogical way of giving courses, our resources, and accessing easily to the resources, it would be nice. We need also a legal framework from our government to take into consideration our tutoring hours online and our work online. And we should maintain this commitment to digital, because it's a nice framework for innovation, for pedagogical innovation. To finish, I will finish with these two figures. The first one is, unfortunately, our current education system is like this figure. Actually, we do not take into consideration creativity, different profiles of our students, or their personal profiles, and so on. So it's actually an education system which works like this figure. And I think that skills, main skills are reading, writing, and arithmetics. And with digital learning, with online learning, we can go beyond these 3 R's. We can gain in kind of that our students will have the skills of communication, of global citizen, of entrepreneurship, of team working, which are the skills now needed by the labor market. And I thank you a lot for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to share with you our experience.
Thank you, Professor Sheneti, for a very interesting presentation. And I would like, before introducing the video of our third speaker, I'd like to summarize some points that have been said by Professor Sheneti. Professor Sheneti said that keep learning in disruption has become a challenge to the global education community. She said also that there are several critical challenges that must be considered in the development and implementation of e-learning environments. She also mentioned that the openness of knowledge resources and the social nature of the web through participation, collaboration, aggregation, and distribution are leading to a new generation of learning driven by openness, networking, and sharing. And finally, she described briefly their experience and their activities during the last few months to design and provide online learning for students, and she gave us a set of scenarios for design and delivery, open and hybrid learning, in particular in the context of educational disruption. Thank you very much, Professor Sheneti. Merci à vous. And I will, unfortunately, Professor Rima Malik, our third speaker, is not here. She had, but she, I will share with you the video that she envoyé to us, let's see, sent to us. And then I let the attendees and our colleague to share their question or what they want to say to our speakers. So let me share with you Professor Rima Malik's presentation. But before sharing the presentation, I would like to present Dr. Rima Malik. Dr. Rima Malik is an associated professor of information and communication technology for education in the following faculties: pedagogy, information and art at the Lebanese University. She teaches and conducts research on ICT integration for education, ICT integration for special needs, and also on digital humanities, on e-libraries, e-heritage, e-diplomacy, and open educational resources. Professor Malik is currently in charge of a 3-year funded project by the European Commission, Erasmus Plus, as part of Jean Monnet Action, and she gives conferences in different countries and on different subjects. She has an extensive experience in international project training programs for school teachers and being a trainer of trainees. So let me share with you Professor Malik's presentation.
During the pandemic. I'll go into details. So, the digital humanities is an academic field which allows us to visualize techniques across subjects within humanities. Humanities problems, humanitarian problems, and
Rime, reprends la vidéo dès le début.
D'accord.
Are not set for all the time. Greetings to all. I'm glad and honored to be among you, even though my presentation is taking place in a virtual way. First of all, let me say thank you for my dear colleague, Dr. Ghada Khayyat, who has worked hard to prepare this conference, as she does each and every year. But all the efforts are worth it, because every year this conference gives a lot of benefits for all the scientific work. Thank you for preparing that hard, Dr. Ghada. My presentation is about teaching with digital humanities in the times of COVID-19. Teaching with digital humanities allowed me to prepare an outline that goes as follows. What is digital technology and how it does influence the teaching and learning world? The pandemic, what did it enforce and reinforce, especially concerning the practices in teaching and learning? Digital humanities and some examples for schools and for universities, and maybe we'll be inspired with the suggestions to start our own digital project, Digital Humanities Project, knowing that you are here in this conference from many different countries and different majors. Thus, we are the suitable ground for a new Digital Humanities Project. Why not? I would like to share my presentation in English, yet I'll be using some French words, especially that I have selected 2 examples from the Francophone word, which is a dear word to me. The digital technology, the use of technology in teaching and learning practices, empower both educators and students. From the point of view of educators, it empowers them to personalize learning. And this way, we will teach in a different way, and we will give each and every student whatever is needed so that to have a very good quality of teaching and to help our students attain their goals after attaining the objectives of the course. When it comes to the student's point of view, and whenever we use technology in our teaching and learning, if we do use it in a correct way, and we do not use it just for the sake of technology, but if it is embedded to serve the objective of the course, this way we will be empowering our students with the 21st century skills and competence. And this way will allow them to find a job in an easier way and to perform in a better way. Digital technology opened also the ground for blended learning classes and distance learning classes, and also to integrate technology in the face-to-face mode too. Why not? But definitely you should always remember that it should serve the goal of the objective of each lesson and of the whole course. The digital technology in teaching and learning was imposed partially during the pandemic. Why? Because we slept in a day in each and every country of this world using the face-to-face mode. And we woke up on the other day receiving an email from our university or school telling us that let's try to go online and to teach distantly because we're not allowed to go face-to-face because of the pandemic. Some among us were really prepared for that. Some others were not. And this is how things became hard for the students and for the teachers at the same time. However, we should never forget the new perspectives that were imposed because of the crisis. So the pandemic has enforced, especially after a few weeks of teaching, when the teachers discovered that there's no way to take the content of the course to use in the face-to-face mode and give it in online. This was not efficient, this was not clear, this was boring. Those teachers started to search for a solution. Even the institution started to search for solutions. And they discovered the instructional design. And those among us who were not very convinced with the instructional design, this pandemic enforced them to go back to the instructional. What do I mean by instructional design? We'll explain little by little this time. Then, the pandemic enforced also the fact that all course elements should be constructively aligned with the course objective. And again, we should say that the technology by itself is not the goal, it is the means, it is the medium that allows us to reach the goal, that is the objective of the course. And then again, it enforced to open up to information on a global scale. Why on a global scale and why the pandemic forced us for that, I'll go into it. First, the instructional design. That is also known in French by ingénierie pédagogique. Definitely, when we talk about instructional design, we mean that we should take our content, our course, and restructure it. We should design it in a way, asking ourselves about Bloom taxonomy to see whether we are searching to give our students something to remember, or something to analyze, or something to evaluate, and create something new out of it. So we should question ourselves concerning each lesson alone, where are we according to the Bloom taxonomy. And again, we should, once designing, ask ourselves, based on a methodology that is confirmed from the scientific point of view, and here I selected the ADDIE methodology. That is, to analyze what? The needs of our students and of the learners, and analyze also what we need them to know and to get, and where do we want them to reach until the analysis, the application, or to create something new. Then to design our course accordingly and to evaluate whether or not our design responds to the analysis that was done. Again, to develop what was designed, to make it real, to make something functional. For example, to create an exercise or to design the whole lesson within it. We have the theory, the exercise, and the evaluation, etc. And evaluate whether the development responds to the design and the analysis, then to implement it and to use it with our learners. And evaluate again and again. And start back again from the beginning to make it better and even better. This instructional design is the key issue for our success in distance learning. Then, designing each lecture alone and the whole course alone without thinking how constructively we align all the objectives of the course is not a good thing. Even though some are still at a very slow pace concerning these constructively aligned objectives, yet we are now, after having experienced for months the distant learning, we are now at a stage where we have to make benefit of this experience and to rethink how to align all the objectives of the course in order to reach a good distance learning. Then we have the global. And when we say global scale and big information, we think of digital humanity. The pandemic was the reason behind understanding totally and completely well that digital humanity and understanding how important it is to know that living in one globe, all of us, we do share a lot of common things. And whatever one part of the people here will love them sooner or later there. And that digital humanities gives all of its meaning during the pandemic. I will go into details. So, the digital humanities is an academic field which allows us to visualize techniques across subjects within humanity. Humanities problems, humanitarian problems, and literature about the humanities and society are not tangible. But thanks to digital humanities, we'll be able to visualize those in a clear way and not for a small scale, on a very large scale, that is on the global. Digital humanities involves investigation, analysis, synthesis, and presentation of information in a digital form. So it's a crossword, it's a combination between humanities and the digital world. Digital humanities breaks and extended across institutional type and institutional. So me on my own, I cannot do a digital humanities project. We have to meet many persons from different institutions and different backgrounds and different places. Digital humanities focuses on collaboration between faculty and students. No more one standalone person doing everything. No more faculty members working on their own or students working on their own. And this conference here, it combines the results of the researches of students and faculty. It's a very good example for starting collaboration between faculty members and lecturers. The information on global scale, it means generating and manipulating masses of information. Then making these connections between technologies and humanities, this will lead to a large-scale project which is fascinating, and it needs the development of critical perspective, because else we could be able to deliver anything and everything. This is not the goal. We need a critical perspective, and here again we go to one of the goals of the millennium skills we need. We need to develop always our critical thinking and to have a critical perspective. So when we say digital humanities, which we say multi-authored work, collaboration, different disciplinaries and different majors, we build on the existing. We do not start from zero. We build on the existing. We dare to experiment something new, and we engage both users and peers. So it's a big group working on this to have a huge result. One example from the COVID-19 situation that allowed the whole world to understand what digital humanities is the following map. The map was prepared by Johns Hopkins University tracking COVID-19, tracking it in real time via the interactive dashboard that we'll see now with data available for download. We are also modeling the spread of the virus, we, Johns Hopkins University, and the blog is available to discuss the study. So we're not interested with the blog. What we're interested in is the digital humanities project, that is that huge interactive dashboard that allows us to understand how things are moving. And each one of us, according to our need and goal, we can pick up and take the data required. So if I'm interested in the development of the pandemic in one region, for example, in Africa, I can spot it here. And if I'm interested in knowing the global that, I can know it from this table. And if I want to go into details concerning my country, that is Lebanon, I can also search into tiny little details. Those are the main areas that we easily see. We know that today in the world, we are 195 countries. And bottom down with the yellow circle, we have 189 countries affected by the COVID, which is 6 countries are still without COVID. Very little. On top left, we have the total number of persons got COVID positive, approaching 40 million, and I got those details on October 22, which is 2 days ago. Then we have the global death, exceeding 1 million, and the recovery. So all of this information can be also visualized in detail and downloaded, and you have the daily cases bottom right with a red circle giving the daily cases day per day in each region and in each country. Now that you are affected, unfortunately, the whole globe is affected with this pandemic, and because we do have nowadays the Digital Humanities Project, this university came up with this dashboard. This dashboard is updated on a daily basis, and it became a reference for many countries, for many journals, for many newspapers, because it is based on a scientific research from a university. Now, knowing that and understanding this whole project allows us to configure and to think of other projects related to each of our fields. I'll give other examples. Now we have an example from la Bibliothèque nationale de France. Comment créer un livre numérique au BNL? So, the National French Library is allowing us to create a digital book and a huge digital humanities project. And creating that book could be a very important activity that we can use in our classes for all the classes, right from the beginning till the end of the school year. This is Les Humanités Numériques, which is digital humanities. And this is the page that will introduce us through the website of Gallica, which is the digital library of la Bibliothèque nationale de France, the digital library of the Gallica. How to create a digital book and what are the advantages? The students here, if they desire to enrich the text of literature by taking a variety of paths, the Gallica Digital Library allows the students to pick a book from the class, a very well-known book. It could be a book for children, for toddlers, for children, and for those in the last years of their schools and college. So they pick up the book, they read it, they can rewrite part of it, add the music, add pictures, add comments, change the story, add videos, add hyperlinks, and then they will, after editing the book, the classical book, they will publish. So not only they've read the book, they change the book and they publish their own version of the book. This is encouraging students, this is encouraging the youth to read, to write, to publish, and to go into this magnificent work of literature. They can explore, they can visualize, they can publish, they can produce. So make students want to write and read, because in order to write within a book, we read the book first, to create their own personalized digital edition of these classics, to add images and whatever they want. It's accessible for free online, and one of the most important digital libraries is available online, and you were talking about Gallica, that is the digital library of the Bibliothèque nationale. Knowing that we do have more than 7 million documents free access. 7 million. So how important it is, instead of telling our students to write a story about on a paper, we can give them a very high way for creativity, allowing them to add to that story, to change the story, to put videos, music, hyperlinks, to change the ending, to modify the beginning of the story, and to let them not only edit but also publish their own story online based on 7 million free accessible documents. This is huge, and this is really something very valuable for all of our teachers on all levels. Again, this is the Gallica Studio, where we will be able to change everything we want and to share it. And also, we have a toolbox that will allow us to pick from it in order to put in our new story. Again, we do have a lab, and here you can see that we are able to do a little bit of coding in that lab to change whatever is needed to be changed according to our personalized project. We can also suggest a project. So why don't we suggest a project that will combine all of our ideas, maybe will be supported by the Gallica Studio too. For example, take a story from our world and put it there and put it in different language and suggest that they will help us. They told us, suggest the project, and here we go, our lab is open for everybody. So reading, writing, constructive projects, we're learning in a different way. We're teaching in a different way. We're using digital humanities project to teach in a different way, and first and foremost, to motivate the students, the learners. Could it be interesting and important to have similar projects for the Arabic literature? Why not? In the very prestigious Alexandria Library. Why not in each and every one of our libraries and the universities to create something new? But remember, we have to collaborate with others, not to work solo. Illustration from the European Association for Digital Humanities. Here we do have hundreds of projects, very interesting projects. I won't be able to expose all of them definitely. This is why I put all the references so that you'll be able to go back and see them. We have Daliate, which is an Erasmus Plus project covered by 8 different countries, and this has the objective sharing and reusing through a digital humanities project, aiming at higher education across the spectrum of disciplines. Remember, we said when we talk about digital humanities, you should have different background and different disciplines. It's an open source, multilingual, community-driven platform for higher education, quality teaching and training materials that combine art and humanities. Arts and humanities. If you're interested in the intersection of those two, go to that website. You can learn, you can teach in an asynchronous way. We have here an ongoing project done in Italy, and this ongoing project, we have again the website for it, the Digital Humanities Project that works for the classical philosophy and Italian studies. So each and every one of us can do that for the classical philosophy of our country and the studies we've had here. Imagine on one single platform, this is an ongoing project, okay? So they're still developing. The first one of art and philosophy, if you go there, you find thousands of courses about art and literature, all combined together in minimum of 8 different languages. So in this project, Architettura della Coscienza, Architecture of Knowledge, l'Architecture du Savoir, in Italy, it combines 800,000 Italian cultural and artists, places, institutions, and techniques. We won't be able to do that if we collaborate all together between universities and the Ministry of Culture in our countries and all the implications of what we have in our country in other different countries through the embassies, what was translated in other languages, what was adapted. For example, we had a very known writer who wrote a book, and then it was transformed in another, it was translated in another language and transformed into a song in one of those countries in the world. Prepare all those implications in one single map, like we have seen, for example, for the COVID. Instead of doing something for pandemic, let's do it for culture. For example, what about creating a digital humanities project about ancient Egypt, literature, arts, grammar, book of death, Egyptian antiquity around the world? This is a huge digital humanities project, and definitely you will find many countries interested, because we do have the antiquities of Egypt are spread all over the world. They constructed full museums all over the world. So why don't we do that? There are a lot of funds for the digital humanities project nowadays. We have to learn to collaborate first, and from there we can have as many projects that you have. For instance, the Book of Death project was realized as a digital humanities project in the European Association for Digital Humanities in Germany. So this project is done. It created already a lot of ideas about the illustrations, the text. They were all made visible in a digital humanities project that could be checked if you use this link. Suggestion. Since we want to teach and we are forced by the pandemic to teach in a different way, why don't we change our researches through this new methods of teaching to have and to create researches little by little to construct a full digital humanities project, to rewrite books from the Arabic corpus, for example, or project about the Egyptian culture, or all the songs and plays of Fairuz, maybe MOOCs, development and management in the Median region. And here I'm inspired what will be given tomorrow in your program. For example, I've been inspired from Hanan Khudr from Alexandria University will be presented tomorrow her project about sports in Egypt. This project could become sports in Egypt, or from Egypt to the whole world, everything related to sport. This could be converted in a digital humanities map. And if we prepare that digital humanities map and we click on each country, we'll have, let's say, a drop-down menu giving us who are the players who played in this country, what type of sport they did, what are the scores they had, and if we move to another country, who are the Egyptian players who succeeded in sport, and then we go back to Egypt and we have all the details. We will teach in a different way. And we engage computer science students, we engage students from the sports area to give us all the names, we engage students from the geography field to give us all the maps and whatever is needed, and to help us refine this. And this way we do interesting and important research. We change the way of teaching and learning, and we create a new input instead of memorizing and giving back what was known by people before us. I hope you have enjoyed my presentation, and I hope it was an inspiration for all of us to start teaching in another way. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rima Malik. We really wish you were with us. I would like to summarize the main point that Dr. Rima Malik said. Dr. Rima Malik said that the information and communication revolution offers interesting perspective which translate into a great facility to obtain very precise information. She said also that digital technology makes a real revolution in the world of teaching and learning and offers new perspective. She hoped, Dr. Rima Malik hoped that to establish links between technology and human sciences. And she said that generating interdisciplinary dialogues, offering education and engineering at the crossroad of technology, doing research by crossing art and letters with computer science lead to digital humanities project. And she concludes by some question: what are the advantage and challenge of in the time of COVID-19 of online education? How to succeed in the essential education engineering, and how important is the critical mind for digital humanities project. I want to say that if any one of you have a question to Professor Sheneti, because Professor Rima Malik isn't with us, and Professor Novakovsky isn't here also. If you have any question to Dr. Rima Sheneti, she is with us. I think that there is no question. At the end, I would like to thank you all for being here, for sharing your experience and knowledge. Thank you for this fruitful meeting. Thank you to our dear guest and Professor Lydia Sheneti, Professor Samuel Novakovsky, and Professor Rima Malik. Thank you all, and tomorrow we'll meet again. Dr. Ghada, if you wish to conclude or to say something, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reem. It would be difficult to conclude and to make a comprehensive presentation of all interesting stuff. Actually, we had 10 of them. We had 10 very interesting and very rich speeches, but maybe it's an opportunity to thank all of the 10 speakers of the day. I would also like to thank our moderators of the day. And I thank COVID-19 because generally when we have a face-to-face conference, we are 1, 2, 3 hours late, but today we're only 30 minutes late, so that's fine. I think over internet, we're more disciplined. So I thank you very much all again, and I invite you to consult your program on apitel2020.alexu.edu.eg. And maybe most of you have received it also in a PDF. So tomorrow morning we start at 9 with an interesting session, a research paper session, not long presentations like today, but we have a 10-minute presentation for research, and we have 2 tutorials running in parallel before we get back into a plenary at 11, discussing and showcasing different pedagogical innovations in this conference. I would like to thank you very much and see you all tomorrow. Good afternoon.
Au revoir France, Lydia, tout le monde.
Au revoir tout le monde.
Au revoir tout le monde et à demain.
Merci. À demain. À demain.